She was 84 years old. She had lived in the same house for over 50 years. And on the morning of February 1st, 2026, she was simply gone. Not a note, not a goodbye, not a single phone call placed. Just gone. And what investigators found when they walked through her front door was not the scene of a random crime. It was the scene of something far more calculated, far more personal, and far more disturbing than anything the public has been told. This is the Nancy Guthrie case. And we are going to walk through it differently today. Because if you have been following this story through mainstream coverage, there is an entire layer of this investigation that has been sitting in plain sight, and almost nobody has connected the dots the way the FBI has. Before we go any further, I want to know where you are watching this from. Drop your city or your country in the comments right now. This community has been tracking this case from the very beginning, and your presence here genuinely matters. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because when movement happens in this case, and it is happening, this channel is where that information lands first. Now, let me take you back to the beginning, not February 1st, earlier than that. Because to understand how someone vanishes from a locked home in the middle of the night, without a single alarm triggering, without a single neighbor noticing, without a single phone call being made, you have to understand that what happened that night did not begin that night. It began long before. Nancy Guthrie was not a public figure in the traditional sense. She was not wealthy in any obvious way. She was a retired public relations professional who had spent nearly 2 decades working at the University of Arizona. She was a widow. She had raised 3 children alone after her husband died suddenly in 1988. She had lived in her burnt adobe home in the Catalina foothills of Tucson since 1973. More than 50 years in the same house, the same neighborhood, the same routines. And routines, in a case like this, are not just biographical details. They are operational intelligence. When investigators begin working a case like this, the first thing they do is map the victim's life. What time did she wake up? What time did she sleep? Did she have a dog? Did she lock her gate? Did she have active cloud storage on her security cameras? Did her pacemaker connect to her phone via Bluetooth? Someone already had those answers before February 1st. That is not a theory. That is a forensic conclusion drawn from the evidence recovered at the scene. Let me build this for you layer by layer, because each one changes the meaning of the one before it. Saturday evening, January 31st, 2026. Nancy opened her Uber app at 5:32 in the afternoon. She rode to her daughter Annie's house nearby. She had dinner there. She played cards. She spent roughly 4 hours with family in the kind of ordinary evening that 84-year-old women who have lived full lives spend with the people they love. Nothing unusual. Nothing that would have told her that this was the last ordinary night she would ever have. In the home she built her life inside. At approximately 9:48 that evening, Annie's husband drove Nancy home. His name is Tommaso Cioni. He is 50 years old. He is Italian-born, having relocated to Tucson in 2006, the same year he married Annie Guthrie. He has taught science and AP biology at a school in Oro Valley for more than 15 years. He drives Nancy home. Her garage opens at 9:48. It closes at 9:50. He later confirmed that he waited in the driveway until he saw that she was safely inside before pulling away. That 2-minute window, the garage opening and closing, is the last confirmed moment in this case where anyone can account for Nancy Guthrie being alive and safe inside her home. Now the clock starts. For the next 3 hours and 57 minutes, the documented record of that house is silence. No outbound calls, no text messages, no movement registered on any subscribed recording system. Then Nancy was alone in a house she had occupied for more than 5 decades. In a neighborhood she knew by heart, in a bed she had slept in through 50 years of Tucson desert nights. She had no reason to expect anything was coming. Here is where the sequence begins. At 1:47 in the morning, the doorbell camera mounted at her front entrance went offline. Not a power surge, not a technical glitch. The device disconnected at a precise moment within a window that investigators have publicly confirmed is directly relevant to the timeline of her disappearance. The Pima County Sheriff confirmed this. The FBI confirmed this. Someone cut that camera's ability to record before approaching her front door. Think about what that requires. You do not accidentally disable a doorbell camera. You have to know it is there. You have to know how it works. You have to know how to neutralize it without triggering an alert that sends a notification to the homeowner's phone. Someone thought about that camera before they arrived at that gate. 25 minutes later, at approximately 2:12 in the morning, a secondary Nest camera elsewhere on the property registered a motion detection event. There was no footage captured. Nancy did not have an active cloud subscription on that device. The drive was empty. But the software saw something move on that property at 2:12 in the morning. 16 minutes after that, at 2:28 in the morning, the cardiac monitoring application on Nancy Guthrie's iPhone registered a disconnection from her pacemaker. This is the moment this case turns from a missing person report into something else entirely. The pacemaker monitoring application loses its Bluetooth connection to the paired phone under exactly 3 conditions. The phone moves beyond Bluetooth range of the device. The application is manually disabled, or the person wearing the pacemaker is physically relocated beyond the signal threshold. Every single one of those conditions leads to the same operational conclusion. At 2:28 in the morning, Nancy Guthrie and her phone separated. Her phone was found inside the house. Her wallet was found inside the house. Her hearing aid, her daily cardiac medication, her car, all of it recovered exactly where she left it. She did not walk out. She did not pack a bag. She did not call anyone. Every object that would tell you a person made a choice to leave was still sitting in its place. The only thing missing was Nancy. I want you to hold the number 228 in your mind right now, because everything that comes next is built on that timestamp. When investigators processed the front entrance of the residence, they recovered biological trace material confirmed through DNA analysis to belong to Nancy Guthrie. There were additional details at that scene, things that in the sheriff's own words did not sit well, details he declined to describe publicly. The doorbell camera mount at the front entrance was empty. The device itself had been removed and taken. In 41 minutes, between 1:47 and 2:28 in the morning, someone moved through a locked, gated residential property in complete darkness, disabled the recording equipment, and removed an 84-year-old woman with limited mobility from her home without triggering a single alarm that preserved footage. That level of operational precision does not happen by accident. It does not happen on a first attempt. It does not belong to someone who chose this house randomly while driving through the neighborhood. It belongs to someone who had already walked that property in their mind many times before they walked it in the dark. Now let me tell you about the footage that almost did not exist. When investigators first arrived at Nancy Guthrie's home after she was reported missing, they found her Nest doorbell camera mounted above the front entrance. The camera had been functioning. It had been pointing at that front door. But Nancy had no active cloud subscription on the device. The locally stored footage was gone. The camera had witnessed everything, and there was no record. And then the FBI's technical team went deeper into the system's back-end infrastructure. Director Kash Patel confirmed publicly on February 10th that agents had recovered residual data from the camera's server architecture. Google provided technical assistance, and what that recovery pulled out of dormant server data changed the entire shape of this investigation. The footage showed a masked figure approaching the front door in the early hours of February 1st. Dark clothing from head to toe, black gloves, sneakers, a face mask that appeared lighter in the footage due to the Nest camera's infrared imaging technology. The subject was carrying a black 25-liter hiking backpack, a brand sold exclusively through Walmart's private label line. And on the subject's body, in a front-mounted holster, what appeared to be a secured firearm. Retired FBI analysts and law enforcement veterans who reviewed this footage publicly described the way this person moved. Not rushed, not nervous. One former FBI agent used the word relaxed, describing an approach that looked like someone moving through a space they already knew. No hesitation at the gate. No pause to orient. The geometry of that property appeared familiar. The figure raised a gloved hand and placed it directly over the camera lens. When that proved insufficient, reached into the vegetation near the front of the property, pulled a cut section of shrub, and used it to cover the device completely. That two-step sequence, hand first, then vegetation, is a method. It is not improvisation. A person improvising does not arrive with a secondary approach already planned, so someone had thought about that camera before they got there. Here is what makes the footage even more significant. The FBI released two distinct sets of images from the doorbell camera recovery. A source confirmed to CNN that those images were captured on two separate dates. The subject had been at Nancy Guthrie's front door before she vanished. A reconnaissance visit, a test run. Someone checking the approach, timing the route, confirming the camera's position, and determining what it would take to neutralize it. The FBI then erected a white tent over the front entrance, ran measurements under forensic lighting conditions that replicated the infrared environment of the camera, dressed agents in replica clothing, and established the subject's height as between 5 feet 9 and 5 feet 10 inches, average build. A former FBI supervisory special agent reviewing the footage also identified what appeared to be a marking on the subject's right wrist, possibly a tattoo. If confirmed, that becomes a biometric identifier that can include or exclude individuals from the suspect pool with precision that no other evidence in this case can match. Now, let me tell you about the 8 minutes that may define this entire investigation. At 2:28 in the morning, the pacemaker monitoring app disconnects. Someone on that property at that moment is relocating Nancy Guthrie. At 2:36 in the morning, a ring camera mounted on a property along Camino Royale, a residential back road running through the northern corridor of Tucson, approximately 2.5 miles from Nancy's home, captured a vehicle moving through that corridor. The Pima County Sheriff confirmed publicly that the timing of that vehicle's appearance aligns with the investigative timeline. The FBI confirmed the same, and then both agencies went completely silent about the vehicle's make, its model, its direction of travel, and the identity of whoever was behind the wheel. An NBC correspondent drove the route between Nancy Guthrie's residence and the location on Camino Royale, where that camera picked up the vehicle. She selected the path that a deliberate driver would choose at 2:30 in the morning. The back road, the route that avoids major intersections, the path someone takes when the goal is to move quickly and not be seen. That drive took exactly 6 minutes. 2:28, the pacemaker disconnects. Add 6 minutes, you land at 2:34. The vehicle appeared on camera at 2:36. 2 minutes of margin. Those 2 minutes are not a discrepancy. Ask yourself what someone does in the 2 minutes between relocating a person from a locked home in complete darkness and accelerating onto a back road. You check your mirrors. You confirm the road is clear. You remove anything covering your face. You take a breath. You compose yourself before you press the accelerator. 2 minutes is exactly the behavioral signature of someone transitioning from the operational phase of a plan to the exit phase. A retired NYPD detective who reviewed the Ring camera footage publicly assessed the vehicle as a Kia Soul. A compact crossover. Common, quiet. The kind of car that moves through a residential neighborhood at 2:30 in the morning and registers as nothing. A sleepless neighbor at a window sees it and looks somewhere else. And that is not a coincidence of vehicle selection. That is a choice. Someone chose that car because it would not be remembered. Camino Royale connects to East River Road. From that junction, the driver had access to 4 directions. South toward Tucson City Center and Interstate 19, which runs 60 miles directly to the Mexican border. West through residential corridors toward a specific section of Tucson's urban grid. North toward Oro Valley, the suburb sitting at the top of the Catalina foothills. East into open desert, sparse residential density, dry washes and trailheads, terrain where a former law enforcement official publicly assessed that a person could remain unlocated for months within a 2 to 5 mile radius of Nancy Guthrie's home. The FBI knows which direction that car was traveling. They have not said. And that specific, deliberate silence around a single directional detail tells you one of 2 things. Either they do not want the driver to know they have identified the footage, or they do not want the driver to know they have already traced the direction to a destination. Neither of those possibilities belongs to an investigation that is running blind. Now let me introduce you to 2 men. Tommaso Cioni, the last person to see Nancy Guthrie alive. Her son-in-law, the man who drove her home, watched her garage door close and pulled out of her driveway at 9:50 on the last ordinary night of her life. The FBI searched his home 5 separate times. 5. Each return to the same residential address during an active federal investigation represents a specific evidentiary objective that required investigators to go back. During one visit, the agents were observed carrying a silver briefcase into the residence. During another, they exited with a white evidence processing case and a brown evidence bag, one agent wearing blue gloves. Annie's vehicle was towed and impounded as evidence. Every member of the Guthrie family made a visible public presence in the days following Nancy's disappearance. Savannah Guthrie posted emotional appeals. Cameron Guthrie, Nancy's son, a retired Air Force colonel, spoke directly on camera addressing whoever was responsible. Annie cooperated with investigators throughout. Cioni produced nothing. Not a single public statement. Not one appearance beside Annie during any of her public moments. Not one word directed toward the investigation, toward the family's appeal, or toward the $1 million reward sitting on the table. Behavioral analysts describe that level of sustained public silence, maintained every single day for more than 5 weeks, while the family around him publicly disintegrated, as entirely consistent with someone operating under direct legal counsel. The FBI's forensic reconstruction established the subject's height at between 5 feet 9 and 5 feet 10. Multiple investigative journalists and analysts who reviewed photographs of Cioni placed him consistently near 6 feet. The numbers do not align. That is not exoneration. It is a measurement. And in this investigation, every measurement points investigators toward the next question rather than away from it. The second name is Dominic Evans. 3 days after Nancy Guthrie was reported missing, a Pima County Court record surfaced online. The name at the top of that document was Dominic Aaron Lee Evans. The charges listed beneath it included felony burglary, robbery, theft, embezzlement, and DUI. Multiple outlets independently verified those records through the Arizona court system. They were real. Evans is 48 years old. He is a fifth-grade teacher and a drummer from Tucson. And he has spent nearly 2 decades playing music with Tommaso Cioni. What followed for Evans and his family after that court record spread across true crime platforms was documented and severe. His home address was leaked online. Dozens of people showed up on his residential street overnight. His wife spent hours in a darkened bedroom, unable to turn on a light, watching strangers gather outside their home. Their 6-year-old son was sent to relatives for safety. Evans told the New York Times directly, "I feel like someone's taken my name." Sheriff Nanos responded publicly. He called the situation horrible. He said Evans was going through hell. He stated on the record that Evans should consult attorneys and consider suing those making unverified claims. Evans has not been named a suspect. He has not been charged. He has not been arrested in connection with this case. Those facts are not in dispute. But the investigative record does not stop there. Evans's verified height falls within the FBI's established range of 5 feet 9 to 5 feet 10. His build, visible in publicly available photographs, is consistent with the footage. He lives in Tucson. He knows this city's geography. His legal history includes a burglary charge defined under Arizona law as entering or remaining unlawfully in a structure with the intent to commit a felony inside. And Evans confirmed that he met Nancy Guthrie once at an Easter gathering at her Catalina Foothills home in 2011. He was there for an Easter egg hunt with one of his sons. He walked through that gate. He passed through that entrance. He saw the layout of that property from the inside. His alibi for the night of January 31st into February 1st was his home, his wife, and their children. His wife corroborated it. Phone data supported the account. Investigators interviewed him for approximately 40 minutes 1 week into the case and had not contacted him again as of the date of his New York Times interview. What investigators are building an answer to is not a question about Easter 2011. It is a question about what moves through 19 years of ordinary friendship between 2 men who shared rehearsal spaces, road trips, studio sessions, and the kind of accumulated conversation that fills nearly 2 decades of trust. Let me tell you about the band. April 2007, Tucson, Arizona. Dominic Evans, the drummer, connected with a guitarist through a Craigslist ad. Tommaso Cioni, already married to Annie Guthrie, already embedded in the Guthrie family for a year, answered a separate posting in the Tucson Weekly. The 3 of them clicked immediately. They formed a band called Early Black. Indie, post-punk, grunge-tinged. They played venues across Tucson, traveled to Phoenix and Flagstaff, shared stages across Arizona's regional circuit. And in late 2009 and early 2010, they entered Loveland Studios in Tucson with engineer Nathan Sabatino and recorded their debut album. The title of that album was Life, Love, Murder. For every single one of the 19 years that followed, Cioni was the son-in-law of Nancy Guthrie. What investigators are mapping is not a complicated question. It is the most fundamental question in proximity analysis. What does a person absorb about a family over 19 years of documented friendship with someone who married into it? Not through interrogation, not through surveillance, through conversation. The kind that happens in a car between gigs, in a rehearsal space after everyone else has packed up and left, in the ordinary passing of information between 2 people who trust each other across nearly 2 decades of shared history. Her address, her routines, her medical limitations, whether she had a dog, whether the gate at the front of her driveway was typically locked, what time she turned off her lights, whether she had active cloud storage on her security cameras. Water finds a crack in stone quietly, invisibly. without announcing itself. That is what 19 years of conversation can do to the boundary between what you know and what you were never supposed to know. Now let me tell you where the evidence stands today. 4 layers, all verified, all officially confirmed, all sitting in federal files. Layer 1 is the vehicle. A car was captured on a ring camera on Camino Royale at 2:36 in the morning. The timing has been publicly confirmed by both the Pima County Sheriff and the FBI as consistent with the investigative timeline. While the FBI has 10,000 hours of footage from the surrounding corridor, license plate reader data from every route adjacent to that geography, and cell tower records documenting every device that moved through that area between 2 and 3 in the morning. They know what that evidence shows. They have not said. Layer 2 is the glove. On February 15th, deputies located a black glove approximately 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home. It visually matched the gloves worn by the masked figure in the doorbell footage. DNA recovered from that glove was submitted to the FBI's combined DNA index system, a national database holding over 19 million offender profiles. No match was returned. On March 2nd, Sheriff Nanos confirmed that the glove DNA had been traced to a local restaurant employee working across the street from where the glove was found. That individual has been fully cleared. The glove is resolved. Layer 3 is the interior biological profile. On February 13th, the Pima County Sheriff's Department confirmed that DNA collected from inside Nancy Guthrie's residence did not match her or anyone in her immediate circle. Sheriff Nanos stated publicly that the sample is a mixed profile, genetic material from more than one contributor, and that investigators believe it may belong to the suspect. The sample was sent to a private forensic laboratory in Florida for separation and analysis. The lab reported challenges with the mixture ratio, but the technology is advancing fast enough that resolution is expected in weeks. Investigative genetic genealogy is now active on this case. This is the methodology that identified the Golden State Killer after more than 40 years, when that placed Brian Kohberger in the Idaho murders through a pizza crust, that broke the Gilgo Beach case through a discarded coffee cup. It does not require the suspect to have ever voluntarily submitted a DNA sample anywhere. It requires one relative in a commercial genealogy database. One. And then it builds a family tree, branch by branch, until the name at the end of that tree can only belong to one person. Layer 4 is the cell tower data. Federal evidence files contain records documenting every device that moved through the corridor between the Catalina foothills and Camino Royale between 2 and 3 in the morning on February 1st, 2026. The FBI has not disclosed what those records show. That silence is deliberate, and it tells you exactly where this investigation is actually standing. Now let me tell you about the signal jammer. In early March, FBI agents and sheriff's deputies returned to the Catalina foothills and began canvassing Nancy Guthrie's neighborhood door to door with a specific technical question. Had residents noticed any disruption to their internet service on the night of February 1st? Multiple homeowners confirmed connectivity issues. Ring cameras with gaps in their histories from that exact window. An antenna-like device visible in the pocket of the figure captured on the doorbell footage has prompted investigators to pursue the theory that a signal jamming device was deployed in the neighborhood that night, deliberately disabling nearby cameras and internet-connected recording systems before the operation began. A signal jammer is not something a person grabs impulsively. It requires advanced knowledge of the target's security infrastructure. It requires technical planning. It requires someone who knew exactly which systems were running in that neighborhood and made a deliberate decision to neutralize them before approaching that front door. Think about the level of planning that represents. This was not a crime of opportunity. This was a structured operation built on layers of prior knowledge. And here is what I want you to sit with for a moment. Do you think a person capable of this level of planning, this level of operational preparation, acts alone? And if not alone, what does 19 years of shared history between two men look like inside a federal investigation building toward a prosecution? Drop your answer in the comments. I genuinely want to know where your mind goes when you hold all of this together. On March 2nd, 2026, Montgomery Sheriff Chris Nanos sat down with NBC News and said 4 words. Investigators are definitely closer. He confirmed that a dedicated homicide team from the Pima County Sheriff's Department has been formally embedded with the FBI's Tucson Task Force, with detectives and a personal advance sergeant stationed full-time at the FBI field office, working this case alongside federal agents. He stated clearly that he believes Nancy Guthrie is still alive. He said there is information in this investigation that he will not share publicly, because doing so would compromise the prosecution being built around it. Not the investigation, the prosecution. That is a word with a specific legal meaning, and Sheriff Nanos chose it deliberately. A retired FBI expert publicly described this case as the polar opposite of a cold case. He called it red hot, sudden, with up to 100 agents and analysts working active leads simultaneously. The Pima County Attorney's Office has veteran prosecutors embedded in the investigative team. This case has already crossed into pre-prosecution architecture. The ransom correspondence that moved through media channels beginning February 2nd. The letters demanding millions in cryptocurrency sent to TMZ and 2 local Tucson television stations with hard deadlines of February 5th and February 9th. Both of those deadlines passed, with no confirmed follow-up communication from whoever sent them. The FBI confirmed it was treating the correspondence seriously while simultaneously running every parallel track available. Google Trends data reported by Fox News Digital showed search activity for Nancy Guthrie's home address originating from Arizona as early as June 2025. Additional search spikes appeared in January 2026, weeks before she vanished. Searches for Savannah Guthrie's salary originating from Tucson were detected in December 2025. Trends data alone proves nothing. But in the context of a documented pre-operational surveillance visit to the property captured on the same camera that recorded the abduction, it adds one more data point to a behavioral timeline that is already extraordinarily detailed. Nancy Guthrie has been gone for 36 days, as of the most recent confirmed reporting. She is 84 years old. She requires daily cardiac medication. She depends on a pacemaker. She has been absent from the home she built her entire adult life inside. The home she raised her children in, the home she never left for over a month. She deserves to be found. If you know anything at all, contact the FBI tip line at 1-800-CALL-FBI or submit directly at tips.fbi.gov. The family reward stands at $1 million. The FBI's reward stands at $100,000. And here is what I want to leave you with. The genealogy tree being built from that interior biological profile in a Florida laboratory does not need cooperation. It does not need a confession. It does not need someone to make a mistake. It builds itself one relative at a time from whatever is already sitting in a public database, and when the last branch ends, there is a name. That name is already somewhere in the data. The algorithm is already running. And the distance between where this investigation stands today and a publicly named suspect is shorter than it has ever been. What do you think happens next? Tell me in the comments. And if you have been following this case from somewhere outside the United States, I especially want to hear from you. Because the reach of this community is part of what keeps pressure on a case like this. Subscribe. Turn on every notification. When this breaks, and it is going to break, This channel is where you will hear it first. Share this with everyone following this story. The more eyes on the evidence, the harder it becomes to disappear. We are not stopping.